and welcome to South Jersey in Focus. I'm your host, Veronica Dudo. On this week's episode, we take a closer look at the proposed wind farms for the Atlantic Ocean. Plus, a renowned concert pianist joins us to discuss her upcoming performance, highlighting classical, Latin American, and Spanish music at Carnegie Hall. From Nantucket to Virginia Beach, numerous lawsuits have been filed to stop offshore wind farms in the Northeast. Meanwhile, many officials say progress continues on offshore wind projects in the Atlantic Ocean, with significant developments aimed at boosting renewable energy capacity. Despite these advancements, there are ongoing debates and challenges related to environmental impacts, economic benefits, and regulatory hurdles. Here to discuss the latest developments and their implications is Sherri Lilienfeld, a community awareness leader with defendOurBeachesNJ.org. Hi, Sherri. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
So first, let's start with what are the latest updates on the offshore wind projects along the Jersey Shore?
So one of the things people are not aware of is that when you have this offshore wind, this wind energy that's generated, you have to get that energy onshore and into the grid so people can use this energy. It's not just that you have these wind turbines out in the ocean and that's that. There are massive cables that have to make their way through the ocean floor and then onshore to substations. So what is going on right now is Atlantic Shores, the developer of one of the wind farm that's moving ahead, Atlantic Shores South, which is the first one to be developed with 200 wind turbines. They are trying to get approval from the New Jersey Department of Protection to bring their cables onshore through the city of Atlantic City, running all through the city, around schools, through Pete Polito Field, which is a highly utilized field, across Bader Field, up the Black Horse Pike, all the way to a substation in Egg Harbor Township, which they call the Cardiff substation. So they need approval from the DEP to do this because they have chosen to take these cables and run them through the beach right by the Tropicana, right next to Ritz condominium building, which is a historic landmark building. They purchased the parking lot right next to it, and they want to bring their massive cables on the beach, through the beach, underneath the beer gardens, set up that parking lot, which is called Park Place parking lot, right next to Ritz, turn it into a construction site, dig and excavate and create all this noise. This project's going to take 2 years, and then run these high voltage cables, which emit EMF through the city. So when you say, what's the latest development? They need this approval. Atlantic City needs to approve giving up this protected land. It's protected under the Green Acres program. And they need to give up that land and agree to give it up so Atlantic Shores can basically industrialize it with all these high voltage cables and vaults and utility vaults and things like that. And there was a hearing for the Atlantic City Council a few weeks ago. It was August 14th. And they faced so much opposition that they tabled the decision. I'm sorry, not August 14th. It was July 21st. So August 14th, there's another meeting where they're going to try to decide. Atlantic City Council has to agree to give up the protection of this parkland, beach parkland, beachland, the parks, everything. So August 14th, there's going to be a big meeting, and I can tell you there's going to be a lot of activity there from both sides, the people for offshore wind and the people against offshore wind, and council needs to decide. There's also a lot of activity up in Egg Harbor Township because that's where they want to put the substation. So this cable's going to run 14 miles through Atlantic City up to EHT, and they want to build this big substation right in the middle of residential areas. So that's like the main thing. That's what we're focusing on now, because obviously if they can't run their cables and get it to the grid, then why build these wind turbines?
Now,
Also, you mentioned there's. Go ahead.
would these
Sorry.
cables be above ground or underground?
So they say they're going to be 5.5 to 6 feet underground. Now, keep in mind, these cables are 12.6 inches wide. They're not like your typical utility cables that you see. They are big. The high voltage direct current ones are up to 525,000 volts of electricity. They emit EMFs, so high levels of EMF, electromagnetic frequency radiation, that is known to cause cancer and a lot of health problems. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be living even near one of these cables buried underground. It's only going to be 5 or 6 feet underground, and
Now,
it's not a lot of
you're
protection.
yeah, you're a chemical engineer. So can you just talk a little bit about the impact that the EMFs could have on a marine life, but then also, as you mentioned, with the cables coming through the land on humans?
Right. So it's very interesting. A lot of the information we get about offshore wind and the negatives is actually from the BOEM reports and Atlantic Shores reports, and formerly the Ocean Wind reports, which was the Orsted project that's on hold. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of pages in appendi of different things. One of them they have is the EMFs on marine life. And it's so interesting to me that they'll state, well, we don't have enough data, or more needs to be studied, or they know that it affects their orientation, their feeding, their breeding, their, you know, it's known, it's in their reports, or they say they need more information. There's not enough information. Why are they doing this with all of these known consequences and unknown consequences? It's all published in their reports. And then in terms of the EMFs on humans, they are quoting levels by the World Health Organization from 2000 and 2007. Well, there's been lots of other studies, meta-analysis, looking at EMFs on large populations of people, showing birth defects, cancers, leukemia, pregnancies that are never able to come to term. There are studies published by PubMed, which is a medical resource of medically published, peer-reviewed studies, not just the World Health Organization, which clearly needs to update their numbers. So they keep on going back to those numbers, and they're not looking at more current studies. Again, I would not want to be living anywhere near these cables, and they're going around Sovereign Avenue School all around. Would you want your kid there all day long and then to go home to be exposed to these EMF radiation all day long? No, I wouldn't want it. And more studies need to be done. So
Now, a lot of experts and industry leaders are talking about how this is a green option. You've done a lot of research in this field. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on this being billed as a great green option?
sure. And yes, as a chemical engineer background, I mean, chemical engineers by education design chemical plants. So I really understand the processes, and I really understand emissions, and I really understand how to control emissions. So in terms of them being green, they talk about regional air quality, which means you're not going to see, when they generate this electricity, you're not going to see those smokestacks of polluted air. But they don't get into the fact that these are made from fiberglass, steel. They're 1,047 feet tall. That's 337 feet taller than Ocean Casino, which is 710 feet high. They're as big as the Chrysler Building, which means they need a very strong foundation. That foundation is concrete and rocks, and even they use plastic. There's so much involved in the manufacture, the transport. they're big. One blade is 453 feet long. A football field is 360 feet. It's 120 yards. Think about transporting something that big. They have to put them on these diesel boats. And most of the components are not made in the US. So they're transporting them over the ocean. So the process in manufacturing, the process in transporting, the process in maintaining them, they're not green. The other thing is, which is also in their studies and their reports, they need backup diesel fuel. They use thousands of gallons of lubricants, diesel fuel. But the most critical thing is they use something called sulfur hexafluoride. Sulfur hexafluoride is deemed the most potent greenhouse gas. There's something called a GWP, global warming potential. It's a way you rate a greenhouse gas. CO2, 100-year global warming potential, is 1. SF6 is 23,500. It's 23,500 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than CO2. So everyone is so focused on CO2 emissions, but there's all of these fossil fuels that are required to manufacture, transport, maintain these wind turbines. And I haven't even gotten into the part about what they're doing to the ocean and the seabed floor and how important that is for the environment. They're just not green. And I am a huge environmentalist. If they were green, I'd be sitting here telling you something different. They're not green. There's no benefit to them, and they are destroying our oceans.
Sherri, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And it really sounds as though the conversation is just getting started. And for those watching at home, if they'd like more information, you can certainly visit defendourbeachesnj.org. Sherri, again, thanks so much for your time. Renowned Argentinian pianist Rosa Antonelli is set to return to Carnegie Hall, bringing her celebrated interpretations of classical Latin American and Spanish music to the iconic stage. A Steinway artist since 1998, Antonelli has captivated audiences worldwide with her performance of works by several famous composers. Her previous performances at Carnegie Hall have been met with critical acclaim, showcasing her exceptional talent and deep connection to the music she champions. Antonelli's upcoming performance is highly anticipated and promises to be a memorable evening of music artistry. For more, we're joined by Rosa Antonelli. Thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So what inspired you to focus on classical Latin American and Spanish music throughout your career?
I always perform in my career Latin American classical composers, but after the success of my CD Esperanza, Sounds of Hope, in 2019, where Albany Records asked me to record the CD with a different repertoire than the one I was doing before, the classical traditional from Europe. It was so successful that I sold a lot of CDs, and then Carnegie Hall was planning for the day after. And my manager said, why not to dedicate your performances and recordings to this music that is so dear to you and you love it so much? Then I decided to do it, and in 2011 was my performance at Carnegie Hall with the entire program of classical Latin American and Spanish composers, and it was sold out. And then I really love to introduce this music to the world. I like people to know that in Latin American countries, besides the popular music, which is beautiful and I love it and I dance it, there is other music, the classical music, and it's beautiful. And I'm very proud of promoting and showing to the world.
How do you select the pieces you perform, and what draws you to the works of composers you have selected?
I usually try to select different composers from different countries. And not only that, I'm trying to look for music that it was never played, no? And then I am constantly searching and trying to be in contact with the families of the composers, and that's why many times I did New York premieres or world premieres of different pieces from these composers. And now I got really excited, and I'm going to perform at Carnegie Hall, six Latin American composers, and it's just I like to search even, and I introduce from another countries. I'm doing from Argentina, of course, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba, and I think I missed something else. And then I try to expand it to different countries, more Latin American countries.
How have your extensive tours and international performances influenced your approach to music?
I really love to tour and introduce to the music to the world. And I used to do tours really long, like 3 or 4 months, and then I try to feel what the audience in the different countries they are interested in. And I realized that all over the world, this music, the classical Latin American music, is very welcome all over the world, and people feel they need to listen to something different. And that's why I like to continue introducing it in my tours.
How do you balance the technical demands of the music with conveying its emotional depth?
Oh, that's a beautiful question, because when to uh, when you learn a piece, to when I approach a piece, I of course first I studied the composer, his life, the moment when he wrote the piece, what happened in his life, um, to try to understand the feelings. Then I try to work technically on the piece to make it perfect. But the most important thing is that to captivate the spirit of the music, what the composer tried to tell or try to express in his music. And in that moment is where I feel the most happiness, which is to transfer those feelings to the audience. I mean, to focus just in the feelings of the composer wanted to express and give it to the audience. For me, it's the most beautiful moment is when I am on the stage in that in those feelings.
Now, you have traveled globally. Can you discuss the significance of your performances at some notable venues like at the Cairo Opera House and then, of course, in Mexico City?
Oh yes, in Opera House was a very special concert, because when I performed there, it was when just the theater was had a renovation, and I was the first pianist who performed in that beautiful the theater. Beautiful and big theater, and I had a tremendous audience, and it was broadcast all over the world. And I had a beautiful experience in Cairo, because when I arrived, they brought me to this beautiful hotel. I have 2 floors, a suite, and then it was fascinating, because every morning the person who was cleaning the room brought me a bouquet of flowers in the morning, every morning, and in both floors. And then I had a romantic time, and a very beautiful experience as an artist, because the how the audience in a totally different country so far, and different culture, they love this music, and it was a very, very important moment in my life. And in Mexico City, I was performing in the main hall several times. I was performing at the universities. I was introducing the work of these composers. Actually, now I am performing the music of Manuel Ponce from Mexico. And it's a totally different culture, but I realized that, like they say, the music is a universal language, and I feel when I am on the stage, I feel that my heart and the heart of the audience, we are together, and there is it's just one language, one is the communication, no? Despite the different cultures and languages.
What advice would you give to young musicians who aspire to specialize in classical Latin American and Spanish music?
Oh, that was a beautiful experience. You know, I got calls for the past years about students from Europe, and even from Australia who wanted to specialize in this kind of music, in Latin American classical music. They never performed these pieces before. They never listen, because sometimes they are not promoted enough. And then I had the music, which is a treasure. I brought the music from Argentina and from Mexico, from different countries. And it's difficult to get it in the stores. And then I present it to them, and they never listened to them before, and they love it. And then they enjoy performing it. They enjoy learning it. And I'm very proud of trying to introduce to them, and I'm very proud that they love it so much.
Now, Rosa, your concert is going to be on Saturday, October 26th at 8 p.m. at Carnegie Hall. How can people get tickets?
Oh, they can go to the website in Carnegie Hall, and also they can call at 212-247-7800. But in the website it's already there, and I hope everybody comes. It's going to be a beautiful night. And also I'm going, like I'm doing lately in the halls, in several halls, I'm explaining to the audience the music, the meaning of each piece. Then it's going to be in Carnegie Hall. Is the first time I'm doing this way, with explaining the music. I hope everybody can
Fantastic.
come.
Rosa, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I had a great time. Thank you.
Thanks for watching South Jersey in Focus. I'm your host, Veronica Dudo. We look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to watch more on New Jersey at onnj.com.